What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks NBA. We are here on this fine Tuesday, and I am, of course, with a very special guest, as I usually am. But this time, I do have the great the great appreciation to have my man Parcero Philly on here. You guys can find him on Twitter at Parcero Philly. Parcero, my man. I know we just spent the weekend together. We had a good time betting the Jets game. Wanted to get you back on DSM. Let's talk some NBA. But how you doing tonight, man?
Bro, I'm doing great, man. I'm actually still bobbing to that, man. That was a great intro, my man. You got some good beats in there, man. Now, but I'm excited, man. Talk some NBA. It's been a while. Obviously, as everyone knows, you know, my 5-5 Philly sports dumb is it's in a dark place right now. So I'm looking forward to talking some NBA basketball as a whole, not just the Sixers, but as a whole, man.
Yeah, man, and I know a little bit about the dark space at least with the Union losing on Sunday. That was a very tough loss. I actually got to sit there with you and experience that, so I know how much that meant to you. And I'm happy to have you here. Hopefully, on a lighter note, kind of, you don't want to move on, but you got to move on, right? Like you kind of got to talk about something else to get your mind off of it.
Yeah, man. That's the life of this 5-for-5 Philly sports life that I chose. Look, it's not always pretty. You have some ugly times, but you have some really good times as well. And it's just about, a 24-hour rule, like Jalen once said. 24-hour rule, you move on right now. My focus right now is all on the Sixers. Obviously, we have a solid team right now, which we'll talk about today. And, of course, the Birds, we got a little playoff fun going on. And I don't talk about the Flyers, though.
Yeah, they're another team that's kind of in that basement right now.
Man.
And then, of course, the Phillies. You can't complain about the Phillies, I guess. It's just a lockout right now. So we don't have much that we can complain about. I guess that's what it takes is the leagues to lock out, so we can't complain anymore. But I am definitely happy to have you here with me today. Before we really dive in here, is there anything you need to plug? Anything you got going on right now? I know it's kind of changing of seasons, so if you just want to let everybody know what you got going on, where to find you.
Yeah, man. So for me, the grind never stops. I don't sleep. No, I do get some sleep, guys. But the Philly sports grind doesn't stop. Even with the Union ending, we still have off season to a lot of off season talk about rumors, how we're gonna fix this team. But now we go full deep with the Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers right now. Obviously, game recaps with them. But anything that goes on in Philly sports, I'm on top with it. So make sure you guys do follow and subscribe wherever. YouTube, obviously, we are now on DSM Media, so all the game recaps and any videos that we will put out there as well. Obviously, still very active on TikTok. Shouts out to all the thank you so much to all the supporters on TikTok. It really means a lot to me. But now, when there's Philly sports, I'm there. That's pretty much all it is. So I appreciate DSM Media, and I appreciate everyone tuning on in as well, man.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, we love having you as part of the team here at DSM Media. That was one of our biggest free agency acquisitions. It felt like when the Eagles went out and got T.O. or something like that. Just bringing the big fish in. But
I'll catch 9 catches in the Super Bowl with a broken ankle, man. Put me in.
Hey, that's why we brought you in, the dedication, man. But you wanted to chat with everybody else here. We're all going to get to it, but definitely love having you on. And let's dig in, guys. Before we do, make sure you're following DSM Media on all social media platforms at DSM_media. You can also find us on Instagram at DSM.do something major. That's going to be our Instagram handle. Make sure to follow us on Instagram. We're trying to grow that platform as well. And as my man Parcero mentioned, we're trying to grow our TikTok presence as well. We're going to get on that wave and make sure we really start putting some content out on there. So make sure you're following us on all social media platforms. That being said, you guys know me, Scotty. You can find me on all social media platforms at Scotty Drown. Let's dig in. First thing I want to talk about today is going to be the Sixers, right? So obviously, always a lot going on with the Sixers, it feels like these days. But most recently, they were able to come away with a dub against the Charlotte Hornets. It was a 127-124 victory in overtime behind Joel Embiid's 43 points and 15 rebounds. And it's starting to look like Joel Embiid's getting a little bit more comfortable out there, starting to get his legs under him again. Instant takeaways from that matchup with the Hornets. And then on a greater scheme, the back-to-back close wins against the Hawks and the Hornets and what that means.
Right. So what I will say to everyone watching these games, I saw a lot. Obviously, both these games. I'm going to intertwine both this Hornets win with this Hawks win because they were both very similar. They had to grind it out. It took a full 4 quarters for them to get the job done. And when you're looking at this team right now, obviously COVID hit us. As a Philly sports fan, COVID really has been killing me, right? But with this team, they had to get acclimated back to it. It really hit Joel, and you really heard Joel after with God talk about how he's still fully 100%. That's freaking wild. The fact that he put up what he did last night. Now, look, granted, Charlotte as well are going through their own COVID situation. They had no height. They were putting up some good young, some young spunky players who have some height, but no one really was guarding Joel Embiid. I saw, was it PJ Washington guarding at times Joel Embiid? Dude, Joe, that was like the perfect matchup. But really, what I loved about Joel last night was he was very methodical with the way he was attacking the basket. He wasn't doing too much, and he realizes that for right now, he just needs to play efficient basketball. That last season, Joel Embiid, that's going to come over time. But for right now, get your footing in, get that feel back. These guys have to play with one another. We'll talk about Tyrese Maxey, but he's got to get implemented into his offense as well. So last night was, again, another grinder in which I really I liked it because last night you had a Charlotte team, which everyone's like, hey, you stayed close with the Charlotte Hornets. What's wrong with you? But you got to remember, that's a spunky team. And look, they got like what's his name? Miles Bridges, Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre dropped 35 on us. So,
dropped 35 on us, yeah.
35 like it was nothing. I was like, what the heck? How that even happened? But no, that's a spunky team, and you have to match that energy. When you got a team like that coming at you, they led by, it was like 16 at one point or 12 points at one point. They had to keep going. You had the most points you scored in the quarter in that second quarter of this entire season with the 44. So for me, this is what I'm fine with this. Keep chipping away because eventually it's going to happen. Like, you have good players here. Now, what I will say is I don't know if this roster is fully complete yet, which we'll obviously talk about. But if we're talking strictly last night, I liked it. And I think for everyone, we just need to relax a little bit in Sixers Nation.
Yeah, I thought you said that very well. Very well said by you as far as what's going on with the Sixers right now. Like you said, just relax. It's a building process here. We got a lot of players that are still getting adjusted. Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, Matisse Thybulle. I know people get caught up in the Joel Embiid part of it, but Tobias Harris and Matisse Thybulle were also had COVID. They were also out, with the protocols there. So, and we'll get into that a little bit later. That's kind of a transitional type of statement because it's something I want to talk about a little bit later because it seems like everybody just forgets that Tobias Harris was also out with COVID very recently. So I'm looking at this team. I'm looking at Joel Embiid. I'm looking at the way they're playing, the way they're grinding out, especially these last 2 games. And you can even go back, their most recent games. I can't remember if there was a game in between Boston and Minnesota, but those 4 games, Hornets, Atlanta, Boston, Minnesota, all tough, close, gritty type of games down to the wire. And
they beat Orlando. They beat up Orlando.
They beat up Orlando. So the one that was the one in between. Aside from that Orlando game, you had 4 close games where the first 2 close games, the Sixers didn't come out on top. And then the second 2 close games, the Sixers adjusted. They figured out how to come out on top. And that's what I found most impressive. I think that's what's going to build this team the right way. I think experiencing this right now, if you lose those 2 games, yes, it's panic time, right? It will cause worry. The fact that we were able to pull out those wins in games where we really kind of needed to win those games, I'm not mad about the way that they won them. I'm happy that they won them. I look at these as building blocks. If the win or loss goes the other way in those 2 games, it could look a lot different, and I do agree with that. But it didn't happen that way. They did get the 2 wins. They were able to pull these out on the road. They were able to pull it out in overtime last night. You talk about guys that are coming back from COVID. You mentioned it. Embiid even said he's not even close to 100% yet, and he's already had 2 40-plus point games since arriving back from COVID. So that's the next thing I wanted to ask you about. Kind of piggybacking off his performance last night, what are your thoughts on Joel Embiid? You kind of got into it a little bit there, but maybe digress a little bit further what you're seeing from Joel Embiid since he came back from COVID and how he's trying to adjust.
I thought at first he was, trying to play like he was like obviously before COVID, right? Doing a little bit too much, especially on those double teams, and that's really when they kill him. But I saw yesterday someone who was just playing smart basketball. That's really all it was, playing smart basketball, finding those open guys, getting to those taking advantage of those mismatches as well. People, in that overtime, people don't realize like he put the team on his back. All 8 of those points, he either scored the point or had the assist. Obviously, that was a good the closing assist, that high-low situation. You had Toby with Kelly Oubre. Kelly was guarding Toby, and he hit him right down in the post, and he had that nice little yam. And listen, this is what we need to remember. The quicker that Joel Embiid gets back into that rhythm, let's not forget, this team was on a 6-game winning streak right before all this COVID scare happened.
Yep.
And they were talked about one of the elites in the Eastern Conference. And now, we've been going through some injuries, COVID, and we've been having issues with trying to get everyone back acclimated to it. But the thing is that when Joel is playing his dominant style and you got spacing around the court, around Joel Embiid, that is when I think the Sixers will be the most dangerous, because we know what Joel Embiid is capable of. How many centers can legitimately guard Joel Embiid? I can probably name 3 that can legitimately guard Joel Embiid or hold up with Joel Embiid, because it's tough to stop him with his athletic ability, his touch around the rim. And oh, by the way, he can hit a jumper, a mid-range game, a 3-point shot. That's really hard to stop Joel Embiid. So once he starts getting back into the rhythm of things, it is going to be so hard to stop this team. And of course, you got some guys here that can shoot the ball, and we had some guys last night. Seth obviously have a little off night, but it's okay. We'll be back at it tomorrow. But even Shake Millen dropped 16 points, and that was huge for us as well. He big points, big minutes in the first half. But to me, I'm not really worried about Joel, because we know what Joel Embiid is. My more concern is, can we get the consistent spacing around him throughout the game?
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great, that's a great overall point and great way to finish your point there. I totally agree with you, and I love that you point out the efficiency part of it and the domination part of it, because there's so many times, and it's been throughout Joel's career, and it's part of growing as a player. This guy has not played basketball as long as some of these guys have played basketball that are in the NBA, right? He picked up a basketball at a very late age, for somebody his size and somebody at his skill level. And
former soccer player.
And we've seen the growth from Embiid in that standpoint, in overall skill, but also overall decision making. And that's one of the most infuriating things to watch when you're watching the Sixers, is when they're struggling to hit jump shots, Joel Embiid just feeding into that and taking more jump shots. Nothing makes me madder than that. I think I went off during the Atlanta game before halftime. I lost it, because I was just watching them. They were at 3 for 17 from the field at one point in the second quarter. They had missed a bunch of shots. Joel Embiid's jacking up threes. Tyrese Maxey jacked up. So, everybody was just shooting threes, not trying to go into the paint, not getting to the foul line. Just settle down, be patient, and let's get good shots. Let's not settle. And too often, Joel Embiid is giving the defender the easy route out.
Right,
Anytime he doesn't take him down to the post, you're making it easy on the defender.
You really bring up a great point, because yes, I agree with you there. Like, if you're not, because that happens, right? This is the NBA. You're going to have those nights where the ball is not going in the net. Go take more efficient shots. Get closer to net. Go for those layups, those easy shots. But, I love those Philly sports fans. They're like, I don't know what's going on. Why isn't Joel Embiid staying under the net? Like, dude, this isn't 1980. This is 2021. If your center can't move around, then what are we doing here? Like, Joel Embiid does not need to be sitting under the net for an entire game. Like, that's not how it works anymore. But no, at that point, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is exactly it. Like, if you run into what you ran into in the Atlanta series at a couple of those games, then yes, find those efficient shots. Joel, go bang down low, because Clint Capella is not going to keep up with you. So at that point, I definitely agree with you, man.
No, and I think it's a good point that you made there as well. Is there's a balance to it all, right? And so obviously we don't need Joel Embiid to be just pinned down on the block, catching everything deep in the post. He's very skilled. He's very talented. And that's one of the benefits of having somebody like Joel Embiid. There's just those crucial moments where, okay, let me stop bailing them out, because I'm not hitting my jump shot at this moment. Because I know if Joel Embiid keeps shooting, and usually, when you're playing basketball, growing up playing basketball, whenever you're not hitting shots, what does the coach always tell you to do? They tell you to get to the free throw line. They tell you to get a layup, get in the lane, get to the paint, get an easy shot, get in the rhythm. And we see it so often, and we saw it last night specifically, as you mentioned earlier, Joel Embiid taking advantage of those mismatches. You got a guy like P.J. Washington. I'm sorry, I like P.J. Washington. He's great stretch big. He can hit the three-point shot. He comes from, a pedigreed school like Kentucky. He has no chance against Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's not many centers outside of the Bam Adebayos, the Rudy Goberts, the Miles Turners.
Al Horford.
Oh, man. You're dirty for bringing that up. But you're so right. You're so right. I mean, my goodness. So we'll throw Al Horford in that short list just to be fair. Clint Capella can guard him. It costs
$108 million to take away one of the best defenders on Joel Embiid.
Yeah, we should have just kept him just so Joel Embiid doesn't have to play. We could have just plotted him at the end of our bench. But no, anytime you got a dominant center like this, you got to take advantage of it. And ultimately, it makes it easier on the other guys. And I think we saw that last night. Now, overall, I don't want to see Joel Embiid have to command and dominate a game like that, 40 minutes, 48 minutes, whatever the case may be. But
Scotty, he's the closer.
He is the closer. That's exactly what I was going to say, man. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Wait, let me ask you, how did you feel when you heard that, though?
When I heard what?
When you heard Joel say that in after the game, he said, "I'm the closer." He said, "I'm the closer."
It made me feel very confident because I guess the difference between that this year and that last year is that sometimes in those closing moments we would see them go to Tobias Harris, and
yes, I remember that.
I think we can even reflect back to that Boston Celtics game, which. That last play of that game was not 100% Tobias Harris' fault, but he also didn't make the greatest decision in what he chose to do in that situation. Going away from that, I think Joel Embiid's like, I got to be this guy, whether it's the closer as me taking the ball and hitting a mid-range jumper over Clint Capella, whoever they're playing at that point, or taking that double team, being patient and waiting for somebody else to present themselves as open. And I think we're starting to see him settle into that. And the assist numbers have been great this year. I mean, it's kind of low key because it's not going to jump out at you like a Jokic who's going to get double-digit assists. He'll get you 5 to 7 assists. It's been pretty steady throughout this season. I think he's averaging a little bit under 4 assists. But a lot of these games I've been watching, he's having a good amount of assists. He's being very involved in the facilitation of the offense as well.
It also helps when you're not playing 4-on-5 basketball on the offense.
It does. It does help, and that's a subtle shot there. But no, I was very impressed by Embiid last night. I was also I didn't know how to feel about Tobias Harris last night. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about Tobias Harris and how he's been performing, but specifically last night because he did step in and hit a couple threes. Like he was very aggressive at least, and I think that's been the knock on him lately is not taking the shots that we want him to take. And it's almost like he was a little bit more decisive last night. What did you think of Tobias?
So yesterday I was actually excited to watch Tobias because I don't know if we've talked about it, but what was that? The Mikal Bridges draft, obviously when we traded him away to Phoenix. I actually really wanted Miles in that draft. I really liked his game. I don't know what it was about it. I think his athleticism I loved. I really want him in that spot. And he's really developed into a solid player. He's developed into a solid stretch four in the modern game. And I really was intrigued by that matchup going up against Miles because Miles is feeling himself this year. And that would have been a really good matchup. And I thought Tobias got the best of that matchup last night. And he was knocking down some shots. He was actually a key part as well in that final series. Obviously, we know Tyrese Maxey. There were some instances where you saw Tobias run the point, which I think he does a good job at, running that pick and roll. And there's a couple of options where, on that pick and roll, you run that pick and roll with Joel, and then you either drive, either you pass to Joel or find the corner 3 guy, which either was Danny Green. Last time Seth Curry wasn't that guy, but Danny Green. But yeah, I like Tobias in that game. Now, here's the issue, and this is what I always try to reiterate to Sixers fans. I don't think Tobias is a 2 option on the team. That's just my general opinion. I've watched him now for almost 4 seasons. Yeah. I think at this point, I know what Toby is. That's not a knock on Toby. That doesn't mean Toby's a bad player. I just don't think he's that second guy that a lot of Sixers fans want him to be. I think if you had a point guard or a 2 guy who can shoot the lights out, Toby would absolutely eating off of them. Yeah. I just don't know, especially in crunch times. Like we just talked about the closer, that quote unquote closer guy. Don't know if Tobias Harris could be that guy. And I know the problem is that we paid him like this. And that's on Elton Brand, because Elton obviously panicked on that all season. But that's just what I think of Tobias. It's not a knock on him. Obviously, his game has improved a lot over the past couple of years, especially defensively. Everyone like Philadelphia, their defense is significantly improves. Like even like Seth Curry, he's getting a couple steals here and there as well. So, but yeah, I just think that at this point, Tobias Harris, we have to realize what he is. He's a really good 3 on a championship caliber team.
Yeah, and when you look at the grand scheme of things, and it's something that really nobody ever talks about, but do you think whenever the Sixers gave Tobias Harris this max contract, were they expecting him to be the 2 guy, right? Like, we do have 3 max players on our roster. We do have Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and Tobias Harris. Now, when I say the number 2 guy, I don't mean scoring, obviously. Ben Simmons is not this, like, prolific jump shooting point guard, obviously. But when I say the number 2 guy, I mean as far as presence in the game, effect on the game. In a lot of situations, if Ben can take it to the rack, get guys, how we saw Ben disappear in the playoffs, it lays over to every single player on the team. And I know everybody, there's blame to go around for a lot of different pieces in this situation. I'm not trying to throw Ben under the bus here once again, right? Like, I'm not trying to do that here. There's a lot of flaws in this with Doc Rivers, with Tobias Harris and his decision-making in the playoffs last year. But as we move on into this season, we do got to understand that Tobias Harris, I don't think he was ever meant to be that number 2 guy on this team. He was never meant to be the Robin to Joel Embiid. That was supposed to be Ben Simmons. He was supposed to be that guy, that next guy up, that next best player on the team. And he's not. And so now we're sitting here with 2 max players that are active and 1 max player that's not contributing or doing anything for the team. And I think that gets left out. I'm looking at, Tobias Harris's numbers, and it's like you said, it's not his performance, it's the expectations that are set. It's like everybody thinks because Ben's here that Tobias and I had some thinking of that during the offseason. Maybe Tobias Harris could increase to 23 or 24 points per game. I'm looking at it now. It doesn't look like it, right? It doesn't look like he's that type of player. He's more of the 17, 18 to 21, 22 max point per night, right? Like that's what Tobias Harris looks like. And that's what he's been his whole career. Like it's not a surprise. And everybody was fawning over Tobias Harris' performance last year. He's not that far off. He's actually averaging more rebounds. He's more involved in playmaking. He's bringing the ball up the court. So I just think everybody, there's so much that feeds into this, and so much that goes into chemistry, as you mentioned already on the show here. Not only is Embiid's adjusting to not having Ben Simmons. Embiid's bringing the ball up more. Tobias Harris is adjusting to not having Ben Simmons. This whole team is, and it's still a work in progress thanks to COVID. They were getting in a groove early on in the season, and they lost it. It's as simple as that. They lost 3 of their key players or more, obviously more at that point. But it does suck, and I just want everybody to relax. We just got to relax. And the next thing that we're going to get into here, we're going to talk a little bit about the Portland Trail Blazers. And I want to get your opinion, because it seems like Sixers fans are starting to get in that mood where it's like, we got to get whatever we can for Ben. And I just
hurry up and do something.
Feel like that right now.
I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. I just don't think that we need to be rushing into things because we just don't like the play that is right now. Like you just mentioned, we just went through a COVID situation.
Yeah.
You need these guys to get back acclimated to it, and to just get rid of Ben Simmons pennies on the dollar. Like that makes absolute no sense to me. This Portland thing is definitely interesting. I don't know how much I actually buy it. But this is, for me, I will say this. I actually had this conversation with my girlfriend's brother today. The Portland thing actually does intrigue me. And CJ actually does intrigue me as well. So it's definitely something we're definitely going to have to be looking at. But I actually do like it. But as far as getting rid of Ben Simmons because like you're hearing people say like, just get anything you can at this point. Like, no, I need something that's actually going to help me.
Yeah.
And when I'm looking at this, right, when I'm looking at this roster and I'm looking at Joel Embiid, when we're looking at a future move here, we have to remember, I do not know how much longer Embiid as far as his health goes.
Yeah.
That's something we really need to consider. I'm trying to win now as much as I possibly can with Joel Embiid because I truly believe that Joel Embiid, like what happened to Giannis last year, I 100% believe Joel Embiid can go on a run like that. Dude, Giannis played possessed last year in those playoffs. I do think Joel Embiid can do that. However, obviously Joel has the experience to get over playoff hurdles. Giannis had to do that as well. But also, Joel needs a complete team around him. And when I look at this team, the way to make Joel get to that, playoff level, you need that elite spacing around him. And I think that's what it's going to have to take, man.
So before we move on, because I can tell we definitely want to get in. I can just feel it in our conversation. We want to get into what's going on in Portland. Before we do that, I do just want to get your thoughts on Maxey, because as we've been talking about this, and it's kind of something that can transition us into that Portland conversation. But you're looking at Tyrese Maxey, who went on a tear whenever Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris were out due to COVID protocols. They come back. His play goes down a little bit, right? He's struggling to find his spots, his shots. He's struggling to be aggressive in the lane because he is having to defer to Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, and company. Thoughts on Tyrese Maxey? Do you think that this is like something to not worry about? It's very early on in their career. Or do you have kind of that fear that it's going to end up in a situation kind of like Ben Simmons, where we saw Ben kind of go into that unaggressive state and kind of lose that passion to drive in the lane and just be an aggressive attacking point guard? Do you think that could happen to Maxey? Do you think that that's something that we don't have to worry about with Maxey because he's just a different breed? And then a caveat question to that, just to piggyback, would be, when you are looking at these potential deals for Ben Simmons, do you have Tyrese Maxey's future in that equation?
I'll start off by saying this. I remember when I think it was like right before the season started, we did a preview show together, and we talked about the Sixers. And I remember telling you, like, I don't know if Tyrese Maxey can be that everyday starter yet. And then we got into the season, and he's starting. He was the starter right away, and then he gets on that run, and I'm just like, okay, this is he's going to come down eventually. He didn't. We go through the COVID scare. He's putting the team on his back. He's leading huddles. Like it was absolutely wild. And to be honest with you, like, it just felt too good to be true. Like, I just feel like this doesn't just happen to us. Like the Ben Simmons situation, then you get this kid who was a nice draft pick for us. Who can he possibly be the future point guard for the team? And that's what a lot of Sixers fans are thinking and hoping. I'm not sure if I'm there yet. I think Tyrese going a hurdle, but like I'm still feeling it. I still feel like it is too good to be true. Now, when it comes to a trade, unless I'm getting like a Damian Lillard type of player, I'm not including Tyrese Maxey. There's no way in hell I'm including Tyrese Maxey because I want to keep Tyrese. Like you mentioned, he's been a great surprise this year. He's been a big production on he's had a lot of production on our offense as well, and I think that he's going to get over those hurdles. That's normal for young players. And I don't think you include him unless it's for a Damian Lillard type of player.
Yeah, and I definitely get that, and I kind of I get where you're coming from, because I guess where I differentiate in the fact where, and maybe I don't, maybe I just misunderstood you, but I do think that Tyrese Maxey is going to be a good player. I think he could be an all-star caliber type of point guard in the NBA. And I shouldn't say point guard. I should say combo guard, scoring guard, because he's not your prototypical type of point guard.
Right.
And what makes me worry about that and worry about him as the point guard of the future for the Sixers is that I feel that Embiid does need that perimeter-oriented, that prototypical facilitating point guard. But also, obviously, Ben was the facilitator, right? But he didn't shoot outside. He didn't provide that perimeter aspect that spaces the floor. So that is where my worry comes in with Maxey. It's not necessarily him, but more or less his fit once again, as we're talking about the Sixers team and fit. I also worry about us worrying about that fit and it hindering his development as well, or him staying in that starting lineup and it doesn't get figured out and he continues to be passive to Embiid and Tobias. But part of that, I think, has to come from Tobias and Embiid and Danny Green, the leaders on the team, not necessarily the coaches. They need to go to Maxey and tell him to be himself, right? Like, be yourself, play your game with us, because at the end of the day, it's gonna take stress off Embiid's body. It's gonna take stress off of Tobias Harris. But then on the other side of it, it does come down to coaching, because I think in an optimized rotation for the 76ers, you would have Tyrese Maxey as your sixth man. He would come off the bench. He would fuel that second unit. He could run out there with Korkmaz and Drummond, throw lobs to Drummond, space the floor out with Korkmaz and whoever's on the other side. That's just the ideal situation for Tyrese Maxey right now at this point in his career and his skill set. And I just wish Doc would stagger it. Just because he would be better with the second unit doesn't mean you can't start him. You can start him. He could be the first guy to the bench out of the starting unit, and then you bring him right back in with the second unit to run that unit as well. And then whoever's hot, you close the game out with them, right? So that's where my worry comes in is how do we continue to use him? How do we continue to help him develop in the right way? Which is kind of going to lead into the next question. I think I want to save it. So we'll get into the Portland stuff first. I just want to get to a few of these quotes that have came out today, because there's just been a ton of turmoil in Portland over the last few days, over the last few weeks. It's all started with, Neil Olshey getting fired, code of conduct violations with the Portland Trailblazers.
Yikes.
El Parcero, how is Dame still locked into Portland right now? I don't understand. Is he like loyal to a flaw?
I mean, I said this in the offseason. Like, it made no sense to me before even all of this even happened. Before the season even happened, I just did not understand why he would want to stay in Portland. Like, I get it, you're loyal to them, and this, he's a very humble guy. Like, he remembers everyone in high school dissing him, everyone in college dissing him, and even in the pros. And Portland stuck with him, and he's too loyal to a fault, like you said. It literally makes no sense to me. Like, why wouldn't you want to get out? Why wouldn't you want to play? Like, listen, no Sixers bias, involved here, but why wouldn't you want to go play with Joel Embiid? Like, he's not the one that creates super teams, right? You're not creating a super team. You're just teaming up with a player that would unlock your talents. You know, I was sitting there watching LaMarcus Aldridge and Dame Lillard tape, and I'm thinking to myself, dude, if you could do this with Joel Embiid, and it would be on steroids, what you guys had together. So it just makes no sense to me why he doesn't want to get out of Portland. That's
actually a great point. I don't think that's something that's been talked about at all. I know I haven't heard anybody talk about that at all, but just, Dame's previous experience with a high quality, I don't want to say a perimeter oriented big man, but just a very skilled and talented big man that can play in that pick and pop type of setting. So I think that is a great point. But
he hasn't had that since LaMarcus.
And then look, just what he just said there too. So Joel hasn't had anybody like that since JJ Redick, and it would be on steroids because JJ Redick obviously wasn't getting to the rack, or even he's not even close to the score that Damian Lillard is.
And that's why I told you, like, I would do a Tyrese Maxey trade if that involved like a Damian Lillard type of player. Like, if you get someone who's just lethal from the 3-point line, who can drive as well, run that pick and roll to perfection, like what Joel had with JJ. Yeah. That's my goal. Like, that's really what I know that can win us a championship.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it, because that's something that for certain puts you over the top. Now, health, you can't control injuries, you can't control the karma of the world. That's you putting your best foot forward, putting the best team that you possibly could put on the floor for the Philadelphia 76ers. And that's really all we can ask for, right? But the talk has been revolving around CJ McCollum going to the Sixers. It's been brought up so many times as like just a straight up bin for CJ type of swap, which me personally, I don't know that I would do just Ben straight up for CJ. I think they have to throw a couple more pieces in there for me to trade Ben to Portland. But thoughts on Damian Lillard coming out and saying that he would like to play with a guy like Ben Simmons, and how does that reverse everything that we've been trying to get to happen here in Philadelphia since this whole Ben Simmons situation popped up?
Dude, that makes why would you want to play with Ben Simmons? I don't buy this. Like, I don't understand why you would want to play with Ben Simmons. You're the definition of a dog mentality, the dog mentality player. Like, Ben is not that. Like, I get it. Like, he's a great defender, obviously a great wing player, but he can't shoot. Like, you kind of do need that as well. I mean, I didn't buy that rumor, to be honest with you. It just didn't make sense to me. Maybe Jaylen Brown would work, but I mean, Jaylen right now is playing with a guy in Jason Tatum in Boston who needs the ball in his hands and scoots, needs high percentage. He needs the ball in his hands at a high percentage, and I don't know if it would work though. That's what I'm saying. Like, Dame for Dame to get to where he wants to go, he needs to play not with a defended-minded wing player, but a strong center that he can work with, and we all know who that is.
Yeah, and it just makes too much sense. There is part of me deep down that feels like eventually, if Daryl Morey really holds out, hey, shout out to the Nest out west. I appreciate you checking in. Number 2 on the like. I appreciate that. Thank you for showing the love today. Of course, we'll have to definitely check out some more of your content over there at the Nest out west. But, thanks for tuning in. Go Birds, of course. But yeah, it's amazing to me, and it gives me a deep sense that maybe, just maybe, if Daryl Morey plays this patiently, doesn't bite on the first offer that looks even semi good, maybe, just maybe, Damian Lillard forces his way out of Portland and we get everything that we're wishing for. With all this drama, there has to be something inside of him that says, man, maybe this isn't the place for me, right? Like, they've kept the same team for how many years now? It's complete insanity running it back over and over like this with that same unit. On top of that, you have the GM that just was fired. There's apparently turmoil amongst, the head coaching, the coaching staff, and the players there. There is one more quote I wanted to share here, and it was actually from CJ McCollum. Let me get it pulled up here. CJ. And so basically, he was calling out the drama as well. Let me get it pulled up. Yeah, so this is CJ McCollum on the Blazers management changes. I didn't come here to tell you there's a lot of shit going on, but yeah, there is. There's shit going on every day, and I'm a effing human being. So that doesn't sound the happiest player in the world to me.
Nah,
he's been glued to these trade rumors. What should Portland do? If you're Portland, what would you do in this situation? Would you blow it up? Is there any chance that you would trade both of these guys? Or are you just looking to trade one and hang on to the other in hopes that it could turn into something else there?
I mean, I think they got to blow it up. I think that is really what you need to do. And remember, you have 2 really good pieces here. You have Damian Lillard, you have CJ McCollum. You can get some really good pieces and start your rebuild, get some young players back in return, and get that ball rolling. But I mean, Dame wants to get paid like the highest paid player in the league as well. I mean, you got CJ putting out these comments as well. I mean, you're not going anywhere. And like, at what point does Dame say, yeah, like, that's a good question. At what point does Dame finally have enough is enough? I mean, I figured by after last season,
yeah,
getting eliminated by Denver was enough, but obviously it wasn't. And now, Dame is in the situation where Portland is not going to make the playoffs. The West is definitely tougher than the East, and Portland is not going to be in that conversation. And so Dame's got to really look himself in the mirror. Like, does he want to just, you got those players like, yeah, they want to just make some money. Obviously Dame, Dame is a very, he's very dedicated to his rap career, which, much love to Dame Dallas, but what do you want to do? That's really where we're at. I mean, I would like for the Sixers to be involved. I had this conversation. I think Sixers fans are 50-50 on this, but I'm telling you this right now, Scotty, if the Trailblazers are willing to do straight up and for CJ, I'm so doing that, because at that point, CJ adds that extra spacing. There's a lot of talk about CJ's, I want to say, I guess, clutchability, as I like to say, the term I like to use. He hasn't showed up in a couple playoff series, and I do understand that. But you got a good group. We got a good group of players. That's why I don't want to do an overhaul type of trade, because I like the depth on the team. I really do like this team. I think they're just missing that second scorer that can play along with Joel Embiid. And I think CJ playing along with a big like that. You got Tobias, you got Seth Curry, Danny Green. In that lineup as well, and dude, that lineup, you got so much spacing there for Joel Embiid. I would do that again. The move for me, if I wasn't in such win now mode, I wouldn't do it. Yeah. But because of the fact that I'm thinking win now, I would do if Portland's willing to do Ben for CJ straight up.
I think ultimately when I say that I wouldn't want to do it straight up, it's more or less I feel like we could get more out of Portland. And the more that this stuff continues to come out, is the more drama, the more turmoil, the more rumors, the more they're going to have to kind of sell these guys for less than what they're worth. And I think that's when you can get maybe a CJ McCollum plus Anthony Simons or a Nasir Little, and then throw in an extra first round pick, and maybe you can get that just for Ben from that team. In that situation where they're just blowing it up. They're looking for something to, kind of boost their next chapter in their franchise, which that's not the worst thing for Ben. I know some people would say, why would you trade for Ben Simmons if you are trying to start over? He's a guy that kind of needs to start over himself. He needs to kind of redo it. He needs to find his groove in the NBA.
Build around him.
Figure out how to score. Yeah, build it around him like he's been asking for seasons here. Okay, yeah. So I was wondering, because Gant put that in the chat, and I was wondering if he was like joking.
Oh no! How did that happen?
He has a collapsed lung. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, definitely prayers out for CJ McCollum. I know we're talking about trading him all over the world right now, but like he said, he is just a human being at the end of the day. And first things first, definitely want him to be safe and healthy there.
Apparently he suffered it against the Celtics, which I'm assuming was yesterday. His timetable is obviously there's not really a timetable right now, but that's really all we got. He suffered it yesterday.
That's a pretty serious injury.
On Tuesday, yep. No, actually it was tonight. That was tonight, Tuesday. Yep.
Oh, it was tonight. I was gonna say I thought they played the Clippers last night.
Yeah.
They lost.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, man, that's prayers up for CJ. He's definitely a great player, and it's crazy we're talking about this because something like that would definitely derail anything, as far as that happening. So we may have just been talking about this. Yeah, see, we got to make sure he's good before we talk trades. I definitely feel that because we're not bringing back another guy that's inactive, right? But. Portland Trailblazers 11-14, maybe 11-15 after tonight if CJ's out, Dame Lillard's out right now. 10th in the Western Conference, 4-6 in their last 10. 3-game losing streak coming into that game against Boston tonight. Just fired their GM. Dame, the signs are pointing towards the door, brother. That's all I can say. And whether it's Philly or not, you get yourself out of there. Give yourself a new, fresh opportunity. I know Stephen A. Smith's been lobbying for the New York Knicks. I definitely don't want to see that, but
how would that even work? We have actually stuff to give. Like, New York really doesn't. You're not give up. There's no value for Kemba now.
He's coming from a sense of that's where Dame wants to go, but in my opinion, it doesn't really matter in a sense. Like Dame may want to go to the Knicks, but he's going to have a short list, and I would imagine the Sixers would make that short list. They're one of the few teams that have something to trade for him and can win a championship because of him.
We're 2 hours away from New York. If you drive like Scotty, you'll get there in an hour and
30. Like, yeah, man. They would have to do something really over the top, like RJ Barrett and like 6 first-round draft picks, something ridiculous in order, basically mortgaging their entire future, which
I love the Brooklyn Nets.
At the end of the day, El Parcero, I don't think that Julius Randle and Dame Lillard are contending for a championship. I'm sorry. I don't believe that. Dame, help yourself out. Help us out. Let's get you out of Portland, man. But
and the thing is, we love Dame. Obviously, like as Philadelphians, we love Dame for his mentality. But dude, like I can't think of a player that deserves a championship more than him. Like everyone was talking about last year, Chris Paul needs a championship. I feel like Dame deserves a freaking championship. Everything his story is amazing.
He does.
I really want to see him hoist one. It'd be nice with the Sixers, but as long as it's not with the Celtics. Other than that,
screw that. If he's not coming to the Sixers, he can just stay over in the West. That's completely fine. Before we move on to the next segment, and it'll be the last segment of the show here. As far as trades, and what I meant earlier by the Tyrese Maxey comment, and like keeping his future in mind whenever you're making some of these trade offers. If it came down to an offer on the table, and I know CJ McCollum, he's got the collapsed lungs, so maybe this is not a great example, but just for example, a player like CJ McCollum, that type of fit. He's 30 years old. His future, doesn't lie in Philadelphia for the next 5 to 10 years, right? Like he's 30 years old. Who knows how many more seasons he has at a premium skill level. But you have CJ McCollum on the table compared to like a guy like De'Aaron Fox or DeJounte Murray from San Antonio, who's been balling out this season.
Hell yeah, yes.
Those are more of your like prototypical point guards. They're the future. If you trade for one of those guys, that's your future point guard, right? Do you keep that in mind whenever you're making these decisions, or do you just try to go out and get the best player and then you figure it out after?
I think it has to be a perfect fit. Like you mentioned Murray, you mentioned Fox. I don't think they're like you already got Tyrese Maxey. And if you're talking about a young guard, obviously Fox and Murray are probably more advanced in their development. But I think at that point, I'd stick with what I have and Maxey, see what I have. Now, if I'm looking for something, especially remember Ben Simmons' value. But screw it. If you're talking about his trade in general to improve this team, I'm looking at someone that is going to add more spacing on this court. And, preferably if it could be someone that could work on that pick and roll with Joel Embiid, I would prefer that. But to me, I'm more concerned about someone who can just shoot the lights out. And obviously have work with Joel Embiid, not so much like a slasher, someone who could drive like Fox and Murray. Although I need to watch Murray's game. I have not watched Murray's game this year. I've seen the stats. I've seen that he's been balling. But, I've seen him play in his career, and he's more of like that slasher type of point guard with that speed. And I want to see him play now, but yeah, that's what I'm looking for as far as as far as the point guard goes. He's got to be able to create that spacing out in the court, man. Got you.
And it makes a ton of sense. And that's kind of, the rock and the hard place that I'm in right now as far as what I want for the Sixers. But I tend to agree with you there. And if I'm the Spurs at this point, I don't think I would trade Murray for Ben Simmons. He's putting up Ben Simmons type of numbers, except he actually shoots. So, you know what I mean? Like, why would they do? I don't know why they would do that. He's putting up incredible numbers this year, and why doesn't he have room to grow if Ben Simmons has room to grow as well? So, I'm with you there. One last point with the CJ thing. It's something I just thought about, but it's something I did want to address on the show today. How come every time that CJ McCollum is brought up in the trade rumors and we talk about, a fit of, let's say you trade for CJ McCollum, you put him in the starting lineup, obviously, you move Maxey to the bench. I think I would probably move Danny Green to the bench as well and put Matisse in that starting lineup just for defensive purposes. So whatever you want to do, if you want to move Seth to the bench and keep Tyrese Maxey in there with CJ McCollum, however you want to do it. Every time it's brought up, it's the fact that there's such small guards, right? You would have 2 small guards at the point guard and shooting guard position. My only counter to that is like, why is that only important whenever we're talking about CJ McCollum? Why is that not important when we're talking about Dame Lillard? And what I think when I get down to that point of the thought process is that obviously CJ McCollum doesn't score at the clip that Damian Lillard does. I mean, it's obvious.
He's Robin.
He's a 20 plus point scorer. He shoots 40% from 3 this year. What is it really like? I don't want to say what is the difference, because there is a difference between Dame and CJ on offense. But you're telling me that you wouldn't take a 20-plus point night scorer? You know, I don't understand that when we're talking about CJ's at 21 points per game right now. Dame Lillard might be at, 25, 26 points per game right now. But then the deciding factor for CJ McCollum is the defensive side of the ball, but that's not a deciding factor for Damian Lillard. That doesn't make sense to me, right? Like, do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that this fan base wants the star. I mean, it's understandable.
Yeah.
For me, I think the issue at hand is the fact that Ben's value is not as high as some people may have been valuing him. But no, I mean, I'm with you. I would take CJ. Obviously, what happened tonight is definitely unfortunate for him. But a guy like CJ is definitely someone I would take. And, sometimes, Scotty, some people just need a fresh start.
Yeah.
And, when you got like such a dominant force or dominant figure like Damian Lillard, CJ, like I said, like over in Portland, it's been Batman and Robin. Dame's been Batman, CJ's been Robin. And who knows? Maybe CJ's ready for that. Maybe CJ's ready to be that guy. And when you're playing with Joel Embiid and you have skills of a guard like that, man, it unlocks everything.
Yeah. And I like what you said about Batman and Robin there, and I think it's a great clarification point when we're talking about Joel Embiid and a potential CJ McCollum move. It's not that he comes to the Sixers and now he's Batman. Obviously, Joel Embiid is the best player on the Sixers, but he would be the lead guard. It wouldn't be the ball in Damian Lillard's hands all the time. It would be in CJ McCollum's hands most of the time as that starting guard. And I think that's a good clarification point, because he would be the Batman of guards, right? Like, Joel Embiid's always going to want his post touches. He's going to want his mid-range game. He's going to want his area of the court. But you can still run that pick and roll and be the ball handler, get your own shots, get to your own places on the court. So I definitely like your point there. The next thing I wanted to get to, we'll move through these last 2 sections pretty quickly here. I definitely want to keep it under an hour. Shams actually announced today as well that Indiana is trying to move a lot of their key pieces as well. So that was reported in The Athletic today. Miles Turner, Karis LeVert, Malcolm Brogdon can't be traded yet. Excuse me. I'm talking about Domantas Sabonis. So those are the 3 guys' names that were mentioned. Is there any interest in any of those guys, or you're staying away from those guys?
I'm just going to say this. What the heck's going on in Indiana? Because why? Like, it makes no sense that this comes out, because why would you give Brogdon that deal if you're trying to blow it up? Like, to me, it sounds like a little dysfunctional what's going up there. And when we watched Indiana play, I was like, oh, wow, okay, they made strides. Like, Carlisle's a really good coach. I don't think he gives enough credit. I'm like, okay, they're figuring it out. They might be one of those scrappy teams making it into the playoffs. Like, obviously don't have that dog elite guy. But no, it's just a weird concept here. But I won't lie to you, LeVert does intrigue me a little bit. I like his story. I like his come. The guy could score, obviously, but yeah, nothing really is just like gravitating. Obviously, we don't need Sabonis. That Duarte guy, the kid was a kid from Oregon.
Chris Duarte.
Yo, I mean, I would love him as a bench piece, but when we saw him, his athleticism, his hands are active, especially defensively. But yeah, no one really is like screaming at me like, that would, like nothing really would set us over the edge. I feel like with this move, but it's just more telling. It's really weird what's going on in Indiana right now. It makes no sense.
And what's also weird to me is like, why aren't they good? Like, I don't understand that either. You know what I mean? Like those pieces that we mentioned, I know, they're not like world beaters, but they are solid players. Domantas Sabonis is an all-star. He's been an all-star several times. Malcolm Brogdon's having a pretty stellar year after the extension, but they're sitting at 10-16, 4-6 in their last 10, 13th in the Eastern Conference. I mean, that's no good, man. And the Eastern Conference isn't playing any games this year. It's a lot better than it has been in recent years. So
close. Everyone's really close, I feel like.
It's really close. It's really congested. After the first and second teams in the East, it's really congested.
I just don't think they have that guy that sets them over the edge. I mean, you look at even in their own division. I mean, Giannis, just look at that right there.
Yeah.
I mean, Joel Embiid in this division, Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum. They don't have someone like that. Like Malcolm is great, as a good player, LeVert a good player, Sabonis a good player, but those aren't guys that are bringing them over the edge, and that's the problem with Indiana. Despite good coaching, despite a solid team, it's a solid team to put together, but it's just not. You're missing that piece, man.
I agree, and that's what it comes down to.
They thought it was Oladipo, and obviously, injury sucked.
He wasn't the guy, man. But LeVert is somebody. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trading Ben Simmons for LeVert. If you could get him in like a side deal, if they're really selling, and you could get LeVert for something really cheap, like maybe. I hate to say this about Shake after having a good game like that, but maybe Shake in like some draft compensation or something minimal like that. I would be open to something like that for LeVert, just to get that. He could be like a really nice scoring punch off the bench, and then you can address elsewhere. Once you decide to move Ben Simmons. The last thing I wanted to get to here, and we got some juggernauts in the NBA right now. And both of them are located in the West Coast.
Of course.
And we're talking about the 20-4 Golden State Warriors as well as the 20-4 Phoenix Suns. If they are not your best team, feel free to digress. I would assume that they are, but who is the team to beat in the NBA right now? Who has that target on their back, or who should have that target on their back, I should say?
Now, it's Phoenix for me, but it's really close. I mean, these two teams are – it's crazy, too. I did not think the Warriors would come back the way they have.
Like this, dude, right? So soon.
Yeah, dominate again. They look great. And you know what? By the way, Klay Thompson is also warming up to come back for them.
I know.
That makes it even dangerous. But I like Phoenix's front court more than I do like Golden State's. That's conference finals because 7 games of those who just go and add Steph versus CP3, Clay versus Bucks. Dude, I'll probably be watching that playoff series every game, but now for me it's just Phoenix. And they're building off of what happened last year. I think I think Ayton even got better. It's hard to believe. I think Ayton even got better.
So for me, money, Phoenix, man. He wants that contract.
Pay the man. Phoenix, stop playing around. Pay the man. He's earned.
I think that's something they could really regret if they don't end up locking him up, man. I think it's really discounted how big of a piece he is for them, honestly. But I think I agree with you, man. I think I would go with Phoenix, but I want to say that with a caveat because I think it's Phoenix right now. I think once Golden State does get Clay, we got to wait and see what Clay looks like. It's been 2-3 years since he's played basketball in an actual organized NBA game. But I would imagine if he can stay healthy, he's going to get his feet under him. That jump shot didn't go anywhere, I would assume. They also got some other guys like James Wiseman, their first round pick from a season ago. He's still out right now, so he's a big man in the middle. Draymond's been playing pretty well. He's obviously never the scoring threat, but eight points a game, 8 rebounds a game, 8 assists per game, right? All 8s. Then he gets a steal a game and a block a game. So he's covering all parts of the floor. He keeps them glued together.
Yeah, Draymond is going to be the 2040 NBA champion as a coach. I really do think. People don't see that. Like they don't see what's going on
coach on the floor.
Dude, yeah, 100%. And you love that, man. You got to love that.
Yeah, gotta love Draymond Green. And I think that's what's funny when everybody compares Ben Simmons to Draymond. There's one thing that Ben Simmons is missing, and it's a pair of nuts. Draymond
doesn't like that. He doesn't like that, man.
No, but I do like Phoenix though as of right now, and I think as the season goes on, I think Phoenix once they keep building here, they could take it up even another level, right? So there is a chance that they could end up, becoming a better team than Golden State with those pieces back. But I'm definitely siding with Phoenix right now. You just got a ton of talent right there.
Right.
You got 6 players averaging double figures for Phoenix. You got 9 players averaging above 9 points per game for Phoenix. So right under double figures, right?
Yeah.
They had just won 18 in a row before that loss to Golden State last week, which I do want to point out they went 1-1 in the last week against Golden State. So it wasn't just Golden State getting ahead of them. And also D Book was out in that second game against Golden State. So that should be accounted for as well.
Sure. I do want to point out that my early prediction in the season, before the season, was Memphis would be a 4 or 5 seed. And they're right there right now.
Okay. And excuse my, I should definitely know this hosting an NBA show right now. Is Ja Morant back? Like, I never saw what happened with that big injury that he had a couple weeks ago. Is he back in the rotation? He's back playing?
Do not believe so. No, I do not believe. He was not there yesterday's game, but
interesting. So
I mean, Jaren Jackson had a good bounce back here for sure. Obviously, we all remember their 75-point win against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Freaking, that's wild.
They blew them the hell out. Yeah,
but yeah, you did. Sixers not blowing out by 75.
You did call out that Memphis on the first episode of Scotty Talks this season. So definitely got to give you your kudos there.
Like me, that Memphis team.
They're gritty, man. They're tough. I do like them as well. They're going to give any team fits because they just play hard.
Yes, sir.
I guess that is all I got for you tonight. We agreed there, so there's not much to discuss. The only other team I was going to bring up was Brooklyn. That's the only other team that I would even consider in that range. But even they are not up to that level.
We talk about this wild story with Ben Simmons. This story with Kyrie up in Brooklyn is absolutely crazy, man. Absolutely wild. People don't talk about that.
Crazy. What do you? That's a good point that you bring up there. What would you do if you're Brooklyn? Like, are you moving? Like,
what can you do? I mean, you can't move them. Like, no one's gonna take them.
Right. It would. Like, would you trade Ben for Kyrie?
Dude, you know what, Brooklyn? We'll trade you one headache for your headache. So let's do it.
Exchange headaches and hope they play in their other cities, right? Like,
the thing is for me, like I want to respect everyone's opinions on, obviously COVID and the vaccine and whatnot, but like it's not just been with COVID though. Like Kyrie's an interesting person, and I'm trying to like understand. Like I'm not trying to like be closed-minded toward people like Kyrie. But it is like tough to kind of understand. And obviously, like I'm an outsider. I'm someone who covers the sport. When I look at it, like, dude, it would be freaking amazing to play in the NBA, but I don't know what that's like, right? So it's hard to understand, but like I can't be closed-minded towards it either.
I think that's a great point. He's just a very
he's Kyrie.
He's misunderstood. Maybe we don't know if he's misunderstood. We just don't understand him, period. So
you know what?
He is a character.
Documentary on him though when that comes out in like 20 years.
He is my Duke guy, so I do keep a level of respect for Kyrie.
Now he played like 5 games for Duke.
We still hold on to him tightly. Don't you worry, El Parcero. He's one of the Duke greats. But no, Kyrie, he's been a character since he came into the NBA, man. It's kind of weird, but he's a hell of a talented player. Yeah. He's got hella talent in him, and ultimately, when I'm looking at that trade, like if that, I don't think it'll ever happen because I think Ben Simmons would be a decent fit on Brooklyn. I don't think that trade will ever happen. I don't think the Sixers would do that. I don't think Brooklyn would do it either. But I would look at the Sixers as winning that trade. Like, if both players agreed that they're going to play once they get to their said destinations, I would look at that trade as a win for Philly. I mean, imagine Kyrie Irving and Joel Embiid in a pick and roll type of setting. I mean, we talk about Dame Lillard, and that's a conversation for another day. You can pick your poison with Dame and Kyrie. But, my God, Kyrie driving to the lane is ridiculous, his finishing ability. So,
and he can shoot.
A man can dream.
He wants to play, man. I'll do it if he wants to play. But
right, I'll do it. Don't you second guess it. But That is all I got for you tonight, El Parcero. Before we get out of here, I do want to shout out our team over at Manscaped. As you guys know, DSM Media and Scotty Talks NBA is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their 4th-generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code SCOTTY at manscaped.com. Manscaped engineered the ultimate groin and body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and an incredibly comfortable grooming experience. Their 4th-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. This upgraded trimmer includes a multifunction on and off switch that can engage a travel lock. It also gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. And did I mention the wireless charging? The new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, which can help battery length last longer. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code SCOTTY at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using the code SCOTTY. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Your balls will certainly thank you. With that being said, I want to thank Mr. El Parcero Philly for joining me on the show today. And cheers to many more collaborations that we have in the future. Now that we got you and on the part of the team of DSM Media here. Make sure you're following El Parcero on Twitter, on all social media, at Parcero Philly. If you want to plug your TikTok and your Instagram, I'm not 100% sure that they are the same as your Twitter. So you want to plug those as well.
Yeah, on Instagram, you can follow me at L_Parcero_Philly. For all Philly sports updates, news, I do have an Instagram account, Owen Philly Sports. That's part of just for daily Philly sports news and coverage and such. And then of course on TikTok, we have too much fun on there. You can follow me at Parcero Philly on there as well. But thank you so much, Scotty, for having me on. It's a pleasure to talk some basketball, man. It's been a while.
Of course, and we will certainly do it again soon. I'm very sure. We definitely got to talk some birds here soon too. So maybe we'll link up here soon for that. But definitely be sure to follow my guy El Parcero. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Scotty Drown. And of course, be sure to follow DSM Media at DSM_media on Twitter. If you go to that page on Twitter, you'll find our link tree. You can find us on every social media platform under the moon. We're on everything. So make sure to tap in, click that link tree. You also find merch if you want to support DSM Media, find your favorite shows merchandise. We also got some really nice Philly sports-oriented type of graphics, so be sure to check that out. And then, of course, be sure to subscribe to DSM Media on YouTube. That being said, myself, Scotty, and for my co-host here, Mr. El Parcero Philly, that is going to be it for this episode of Scotty Talks NBA. Make sure to tune in the rest of the week. DSM Media has you covered across the board, guys. Peace.